Welcome to heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. My name is Mike Chisholm. As always, I am your host. You're a very happy host. I love doing this. I love having these conversations with cool people about cool things. Thank you. Before we get going with our guest today, first off, our guest is a stand-up today, and you've heard me talk about stand-ups before and the reverence I have for the art form and for stand-ups in general. So I'm very excited about that. Before we get going and bring Trent on, I just want to say thank you very much for everybody who has shared and subscribed to the podcast, to heCast so far. Thank you so much for that. Thank you to anybody who's downloaded the app. We've got great things happening within the world of He Changed It. So thank you for that. And we're just really, really grateful and excited to do another one of these bad boys. Our guest today, I should say, is Trent Mabry. He is a young stand-up. And I believe he's from the same state as my hero when it comes to broadcasting, and that's David Letterman. I believe he's from Indiana. I don't know if he's born and raised, but we'll find that out. And he's just a guy who I immediately, when I saw his stand, I saw about 45 seconds of his stand-up. And within about 45 seconds, he had talked about how we need to have like plastic straw control, and he likened that to gun control. And it was just one of those perfect things that only logic jumps that only a stand-up can make. And I knew that immediately I was going to connect with him. He also, on his podcast, and we'll get him to talk about that, has had some amazing guests on as well. And I want to bug him and tribute him for that. But let's get him on here. Trent Mabry, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be on heCast today.
Oh, thanks for having me. That was a great intro.
Oh,
and I am going to take over as host. You didn't mess up.
Yeah, you go for it, man. You go for it. 26 years old?
That's correct. Yeah.
How long have you been doing stand-up?
Well, I started I did it like a couple times when I was 17.
Yeah.
And then I decided I should probably like finish school. It was getting in the way of every open mic was on a school night. So that was a challenge. So then I started like really pursuing it right after I graduated. So around 19, I started. So like 7 years probably is.
Okay. I'm terrible at math. What year did you graduate the high school?
I graduated in 2013.
Okay. So 2013. The people around you, when you were 17 or even when you graduated and you just started getting back into it when you're 19, the people around you, were they supportive or were they like, what the hell is this guy doing?
No, everyone was pretty supportive. Yeah, I mean, my friends thought it was the coolest thing ever. They all came. I did the first open mic was a bringer show. If you know what that is, where you have to bring, you have to bring 5 people in order to perform.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So
I know all about that. I know I've got the pro wrestling. We talked a little bit about the pro wrestling stuff. I've got, we would have sometimes, I would hate to say this, but the booker of our show would sometimes book talent based on how many tickets they could sell.
Oh, that happens a lot.
Yeah. So I think they're similar in that regard. So you went to a bringer show. How many people did you bring?
Well, you had to bring 5. I think it may have ended up getting like 6 or 7. Which it's easy to do it your first time. And then with each passing time, it sort of dwindles in how many people are interested. But yeah, the first show I did was at a place called Crackers Comedy Club in Broad Ripple. And you got like 3 minutes your first time.
Yeah.
And I did really well. And then the second time I had to bring 5 more people. I brought my family this time and I bombed.
You bombed. So the second time you bombed.
Yeah.
If you would have bombed the first time, would you have gone the second time?
Oh yeah, because this is the only thing I ever wanted to do was stand up. So even if I probably wouldn't even have realized I had bombed, but since I did so well the first time, you really realize that you're not doing well the second time.
I crave that. And the reason I say that is because I know that for me personally, we talk about this a lot on heCast. We talk about how guys finding their purpose, doing what they want to do. And many times some of the blocks that we run into are when we're not doing what we truly want to do or haven't tried some of those things. When I was that age, I had this fierce desire to want to go out and try it, and I never did. And this is where I salute, especially young comics, people who actually say, you know what, I'm going to step out and I'm going to do that. How old were you when you decided that stand-up was something that you wanted to do? Like, were you like a teenage nerd, kind of like some of those comics that are out there that just immerse themselves into it in their teenage years, or who are your influences?
Oh yeah, I was a big comedy nerd. Probably like 7th grade, so that would be 13 maybe. Yeah. But even before that, like I never really put it together, but like I just like some of my earliest memories are like I watched the sitcom Seinfeld, like when I was real young, probably even before I was in school. I remember watching a Chris Rock special with my dad way before I was probably supposed to be watching something like that. Yeah. So even my earliest memories are like stand-up related, but I didn't put it together that that's what I wanted to do until middle school.
For me, it was growing up, and I mean, I've got 20 years on you. It was listening to comedy records in friends' parents' basements, you know, and listening to guys like George Carlin and Richard Pryor and Bill Cosby and some of these old, old now comedians. And it fascinates me, the way that they could capture a room and take the room and put them in the palm of their hand and take them on a journey. It's kind of a power thing, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah. And it's weird because I was always like a shy kid. I never really enjoyed being the center of attention. I'm an only child too. So yeah, people like my family and stuff, they were kind of like, found it hard to believe that this is what I wanted to do. My friends, I was more open with. They understood it because I was funny around them. But yeah, it's kind of a shock to my family and stuff that this is what I wanted to do.
And you are the picturesque, stereotypical American Midwestern boy at that age, right? You're from Indiana?
I am from Indiana, yeah.
Born I'm such a gigantic David Letterman fan, and of course he's one of the famous ones that have come out of Indiana for sure.
Oh yeah, probably the most famous person, I think.
That's actually how I connected with you. You've got a podcast. What's your podcast called?
It's called There You Go with Trent Mabry.
There You Go with Trent Mabry. And that's how I discovered you. I discovered you via your podcast because you had, in my world, you had two gargantuan guests that I'm just blown away that you've had conversations with these people. And if I was coming up in stand-up, these are two guys that I would love to have a conversation with. Bill Sheft, who is David Letterman's, his monologue writer, kind of his right-hand man, and Steve Young, who was the head writer of the whole damn show. Yeah. You've had conversations with a couple of icons.
I know. Yeah. It's crazy. And I just emailed them on a whim and they said I agreed to do it.
It reminds me when I saw that and you let me know that, it tickled me. I don't know if you know very much about Judd Apatow's history.
Oh yeah.
And I think about that, right? Like the guy was he had a high school radio gig or something, and he would just go and find as many stand-ups as he could and just pick their brains and interview them. In stand-up, I find personally, it is an extremely collaborative art form. Like any stand-ups that I've met, they love to kind of travel in packs, like at parties and stuff. If they see each other, they'll gather and they'll get with other stand-ups, and they're constantly helping each other. And that includes, icons who will go to younger stand-ups and give them tips and things like that. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, stand-ups love to talk to other stand-ups because they can say whatever they want, But also, it's great. If I had known it was going to be this easy to just get people to agree to do my podcast, I would have done it a lot earlier.
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, it's been pretty crazy. My podcast started out as just me. It started out like a Dear Abby, like a comedic Dear Abby, where I would have people email me and then give my advice.
Very good.
And I still do that. And I have like my other comic friends come on and do that. But then I emailed this comedian Jeff Altman. I don't know if you know who he is.
Of course.
Just to see if I could get him to do it. And then like an hour later, he emailed me back and agreed to do it. And I was like, oh, well, now I have to prepare.
Yeah.
So then I interviewed him, and then he said I could help you get other people. I go, all right, sure. So that's how it's kind of evolved into that. And I still do like the silly ones with my comedy friends, and I interview other people as well.
How is the comedy scene where you are in the world right now?
Well, it's kind of slow right now. We used to have in Indiana, like 4 clubs.
In the whole state?
Just in like Indianapolis. And then there was one in Bloomington and one up north. So, which is pretty good for a state like Indiana. Now we're down to 2 clubs downtown. But one's called Helium Comedy Club, which is like a chain. They have like 7 around the state. It's a really good comedy club. That's my home club.
Yeah.
Then there's like 25, 30 comics there that are around consistently, and maybe 5 are good. No, I'm kidding. But I think it's a good scene with like compared to our size of the other, and we're in like the Midwest, so everything is fairly close. So it's a fairly easy drive to get to other major cities and stuff.
Yeah. What's been your favorite gig so far in your stand-up career?
My favorite gig was probably I got to open for Kevin Nealon at
No shit.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
At Helium.
Were they give you 10 minutes?
I had 15.
Very nice.
Yeah. It was a weekend, so I did Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I hung out with them in the green room. Sold out shows. And he's like one of my favorite comics, so the crowd really like connected with what I was doing because they're there to see Kevin Nealon, who influenced me. So it was a really fun experience.
That's amazing to me that someone 20 years my junior can be influenced by Kevin Nealon. Kevin Nealon was, people always talk about their favorite casts on Saturday Night Live. When I was in high school, he was one of the mainstays on SNL. And the one thing many things I love about Kevin makes sense why I've attached myself to your material, I suppose. He's so dry.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to almost like wait for, and you almost got to let the joke kind of settle in your head to get it. Like he's got that, and you have that same thing in that bit about the straws that you do. It's that same thing. You think about it for a second, and then you think about it, and then the second wave of laughter or humor comes into the head.
Right. Yeah. And that doesn't always work. I just did some shows last weekend where the crowd was not into that sort of style. But it's weird, like as a host where you go up first to like a completely cold audience.
Yep.
That stuff doesn't always work. But if I went up second, it would be a completely different show, a completely different reaction.
It's just literally the warm up, like what warm up actually is. They're warmed up now. And so they're ready to have a little bit of silence to look for the joke, as opposed to silence because they haven't been initially, enticed.
Yeah, they're still looking at the menu, trying to figure out what they want to order.
Right. Do you like hosting?
It's fun sometimes. I would much rather like feature or I've headlined like bar shows and stuff. I haven't headlined a comedy club yet, but featuring's easy. You get in there, you do 25 minutes and you leave. As a host, you gotta stick around. You gotta be ready for when the next comic gets off. There's a lot of work and for little reward.
As we discussed off camera, this is something that I'm going to do it just for the exercise, to scratch the itch. And for me, I've emceed a whole bunch of different events and city events and weddings and all sorts of shit. And to me, hosting is one of those things where I would gravitate towards it because I'm the guy who likes to, when somebody says something, I'll have a wisecrack. And so I think about if I'm listening to the comics that are up there, they leave, I can kind of come up and have the last word. I think good hosts kind of do that. They put the evening together that way, and they kind of connect each comic as they say goodbye to the last one and intro the next one.
Yeah, definitely.
I am drawn to something that you said earlier. And I want to talk a little bit about today, because you're a young comic that's coming up. I'm a Gen Xer, kind of looking at the culture that has shifted around me as your generation has kind of, taking the baton and become adults and become part of the equation here. One of the things that you said in the conversation earlier is that stand-ups at parties, they will gravitate towards each other because they can say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And saying anything right now, I think, is almost at a premium. When I was growing up, it was like, and we've said this on the podcast before in other contexts, but in the context of stand-up, like for me, it was hip hop music and NWA and pornography and all these things were like challenging freedom of expression and freedom of speech and all these things. And I felt like our generation, the Gen X Nirvana generation, I felt like we won. I felt like we, Eminem can say whatever he wants and Andrew Dice Clay can say whatever he wants. And there were a few years of that. And now since then, the ground has kind of shifted. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of the liberal left now who's so sensitive about everything,
Yeah, it's reversed. It used to be like the Christian conservative Christians were the ones up in arms about everything.
Yeah.
Now it is the left. And I'm on the left, and I try to speak up and say, let's relax. It's a joke.
Right.
I don't know. It's certainly weird. It's a weird, like the pendulum has swung way further, and hopefully we'll get it back in somewhere where it was in the 2000s or late 90s.
Back to the center. I feel the same way. So when you're writing material and you and your friends are talking to each other and you're saying things that you would not be able to say on stage. Am I right about that?
Yeah. I try not to like let that affect what I do comedically. I'm not really worried about like saying something in a comedy club.
Right.
But like putting something up online is like, you don't know, you can't control. Like if a joke doesn't work in a comedy club, you can kind of save yourself. If you hear something bomb, you can throw out a line that'll get the crowd back on your side.
Yeah.
You can address it. But once something's out online, there's no like everything is taken out of context. It's a weird predicament to have.
You're talking more like things that are typed, like tweets and things like that, or are you talking on the podcast too?
Not so much on the podcast because nobody really listens to it, but on
damn good.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
There you go.
But yeah, like but like tweets and stuff, like I actually had a semi sort of controversy. I put out like a stand-up clip on YouTube, and then I tweeted it out, and then I got a good reaction from it. And then like one of my friends liked it or retweeted it, and then one of their friends saw it and got offended by it.
Right. So
they like quoted it and sent it out to all of their friends who all think exactly like them. And then they started piling on towards it. It was a weird situation. I actually got a death threat from it.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. What did they threaten to do to you? Like, what was it?
This guy tweeted a picture of himself in a ski mask holding a gun.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was crazy.
What goes through your mind? Like this is why I wanted to talk to you. Like the idea of a young comic to me right now in this polarized times that we live in, and male for that matter as well, white for that matter as well. Like these are complex things that from an outsider looking in, it's like, holy cow, you got a lot of shit to negotiate as you're performing your craft. A ski mask with a gun. Jesus.
Yeah. It was like it was to me like my first reaction was all right, this is kind of funny.
The typical stand-up reaction, of course.
Yeah, but it is also a little scary because it's like, all right, I thought like, all right, I'll give it like an hour and it'll die down,
right?
people would move on to something else, but they kept piling on.
What was the
and
premise?
I also
Do you remember the premise of the bit?
Yeah, the joke is I go, it's kind of what we were talking about. I go, as a straight white guy, I kind of wish I'd been born like, I don't know, 70, 80 years ago, you know, not because, like, don't get me wrong, I'm happy we're finally addressing systemic racism and the way we treat women. Yeah. And hopefully we're holding people accountable for that. I just wish it wasn't happening during my lifetime. Because I don't want to be held responsible for my actions. That's the joke. And to me, it's obvious that I'm on their side, you know, like,
yes,
I like those things. But to me, the joke is I'm so selfish that I want the world just to be good for me. That's the joke.
Yes.
And I thought that was obvious. But
it is
these
obvious.
People, yeah.
But some people, it's just some people don't have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
You know, and I just think about, like, again, comedians. I think I said this in the pre-interview or our talk beforehand before the camera started rolling. As far as I'm concerned, comedians are the last gunslingers. Mm-hmm. Like they're the ones who, when they observe what's going on in the culture and can point out the things that are obviously ridiculous, they've gone way too far over way too many lines. Comedians are the ones who, in my opinion, point that stuff out in a profound way. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there who don't necessarily, I don't know if it's that they don't have humor or they don't have or they have an agenda where they just want to stop this because for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, but the outrage culture that has kind of bubbled up over the last, 4 or 5 years is astounding. And I mean, God, you got to take that into consideration when you're up on stage. Like, do you like try and kind of test the audience to see where they're at, and then you know which way you're going to negotiate, and maybe you leave certain bits out, or do you just say, fuck it, I'm just going to go for it and see what happens?
It depends on like where the show is and stuff. Sometimes I will test out the audience, like see how they react to some stuff. But if I'm at like an open mic or something, I'm trying new stuff, I'll just try it. But yeah, if it's like a show, like a paid show or something, I'll test out the waters, see how they react. But yeah, I don't know. It's just people looking to be outraged sometimes. Yeah. They just want something to give their life meaning, I guess. It's a weird way of thinking, in my opinion.
Yeah, me too. And I almost, like I've said this to my wife before, and I mean, you know, people, this cancel culture stuff that's happening out there. It's like, okay, so I'm a white guy, hosting a podcast, talking about men and how, you know, right now I got friends who are in their 40s right now that are terrified because of how they behaved 20 years ago.
Right.
And they're terrified about how everything can be taken away from them now, not taking into consideration things that they've learned in the last 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And I think somewhere we've lost like the ability to put things in the context of the time that they happened. Yes. We have to judge everything based on like 2021 standards, like from 40 years ago. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't, does it? Yeah. Like, and this is why I love having conversations with people who are kind of right in the thick of it, because it's folks that are in their 20s and 30s right now that I think are driving these ideals out there. And I just want to, like, is there no consideration for the fact that we have evolved? Like Burr does, a bit about the Duck Dynasty guy, and you know, the Duck Dynasty guy came under fire for being anti-homosexual or whatever. Yeah. And Burr's like, what do you think he thought? Like, he's an old man with a giant beard, grew up in the South, Christian guy. What do you think he thought? What do you think he thought? Right? Like, yeah. Like some of the stuff, it makes me shake my head, because it's like, well, like, is there no common sense here? Right, exactly. And also the people that are mad about that weren't watching Duck Dynasty anyway. Yes, exactly.
So just let the guy, it doesn't affect you really. He's not he's not in control of anything.
No.
He just runs a duck call company.
Right?
Yeah.
And, I just, that's the stuff that I shake my head at. And I wonder, how is it going to rectify itself? And the polarization, these echo chambers that just people keep jumping into. Like, it's interesting how you talked about how it was your little bit of trouble you got yourself into unwittingly. Everything was fine when it was in your circle, but as soon as it got into the circle of some of these other people, that's when the echo chamber starts bouncing around with those people, and they target their hatred or their bile towards a 26-year-old comic from Indiana. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I know. And also, like, they'll watch the video and then just completely ignore the room full of people that are laughing. Like, I made the mistake of engaging with them, and like one of them said, "This is not funny at all." And I replied, "The room full of people laughing disagree."
Okay. Which is a great retort, and it's also common sense, and it's also, by the way, proven, because there's video footage of what you just said. So didn't go so well?
No, they weren't in the mood to debate. It was really just a pile on.
Man, it's different than hecklers, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Do you engage hecklers?
Heckling, I feel like, and maybe it's just like the shows I've done. Maybe if when I move out to New York, it'll be different. But they don't really happen that often. Like, there's never I've never really experienced like a mean-spirited heckler. It's a lot of people that are like try to add on to something or say like, that's funny or whatever, But I've never really had a guy yell, "You suck," or anything like that.
That's because you don't suck, Trent. That's because you're awesome, brother.
That could be it. Yeah.
You're moving to New York.
Yeah. In mid-June.
During a pandemic, you're just going for it.
Well, hopefully things will be starting to open up then. We were supposed to move in January, and that would have been a real mistake. But I'm glad we pushed it back. I'm moving with two other comics.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
Have you already staked out which part of the scene you want to jump into? Are you guys able to jump into at this point in your careers the Cellar and Gotham and all of those types of places, or are there the other lower sort of tier clubs that you got to go to before you graduate to those guys?
Yeah, the Cellar and stuff, you have to be basically you have to be on TV to get into those places. But yeah, hopefully start at like lower tier clubs and stuff. And like alt room shows, bar shows and stuff like that. Hopefully. I don't really know. We'll figure it out. It's kind of like starting over, except you have all your material,
right? But
people just don't know who you are. So you got to get out there and show your face and get up on stage and hopefully do well. Are you a Joe Rogan guy? Yeah, I like Joe Rogan. I'll watch his podcast sometimes, and not so much his stand-up's fine. It's not necessarily my favorite.
Yeah. Have you seen what he's doing in Austin, Texas?
Oh yeah, the club.
It's interesting. He wants to be. It's like he's shining the bat signal for stand-ups to all come down there.
Yeah, a lot of people are moving there. He had the Adam Egget, the booker of the store. He hired him to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. A lot of LA comics are going to move to Austin. I don't know. I haven't seen a mass exodus of New York guys.
Right.
It's
they still got the scene going over there.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of clubs in New York, and LA kind of has just the Laugh Factory and the store.
Yeah.
And the Improv, I guess.
And the Improv. And yeah. Well, it's funny as a Canadian, listening to how different regions of the US have been affected by COVID. It's interesting to hear California versus different other spots in Texas and New York and all of that. I don't know how the stand-up scene, like when I look at California, I don't know how the stand-up scene anywhere has survived at all when I look at some of the things that have happened to them. Have you been working this whole year? Like have the clubs in Indiana, did they just basically get protocols right away that people could still do shows, or was there a blackout period for you where you were just kind of working on material and in your podcast and online and stuff?
There was like a 3 months where they shut down. That's when I started doing the podcast because I didn't have anything to do. And then they reopened, but they weren't doing the open mic and they weren't doing like smaller shows. But basically what they're doing now and what they started out doing was it was like 25% capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So I featured a couple times and hosted a few times. And now I think it's like maybe half capacity right now. Still not at full capacity yet, but the Helium and Crackers, the other club, they were still doing shows. They shut down for maybe like 3 months.
Okay. I mean, it seems like a real elementary question here, but at the same time, I'm curious about the response for sure, nonetheless, because I'm an elementary guy, I guess. Was 25% capacity versus a full room? How different is that for you when you go up there and you're performing? Is your pacing different? Are you or is it just you rely on the material and that's it?
Yeah, the pacing is different. Especially for like how I do stand up, where I take a lot of long pauses and stuff. With a smaller crowd, you can't really do that. Mm-hmm. Because they don't give you the big laughs like a obviously a sold out room would do.
Right.
So you have to kind of like change the way you deliver your material. I mean, you can still have a good show with 40 people. It's just obviously not going to be as fun as a sold out room, but you can be a little looser as well. Like you can try out new stuff. Whereas like a sold out room, you kind of feel pressured to do your best stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to ask, so which room is it better to work stuff out with? Is it because it's a little bit tougher to get that crowd to laugh when it's smaller? Is that a better gauge as to if your material is really working or not? Or would you rather, if you're going to work on new stuff, would you rather a full room?
I would rather like a smaller crowd, like trying out stuff, just because if a joke gets a big laugh, okay, this might be a really good joke.
This is where I gotta,
yeah. Whereas like a sold out crowd, like even like a throwaway line could get a big laugh, and then you can't really gauge. So I like trying it out in both rooms and seeing how things go. And if you're right. If a joke gets a big laugh with a smaller crowd, it'll usually get a huge laugh with a sold out crowd.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
I want to go back to one of your, so I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit, because the bit that I, again, just immediately connected with you was you connected, banning of plastic straws and which was great. You used a great example to do that. And then you connected it to gun control. And I just came out of my chair laughing at that. I thought it was just a brilliant segue. Do you like making material? Like I look at the guy like Jerry Seinfeld, and he's very observational and things, and I love that, don't get me wrong. But then there are guys who push the envelope. I think you got guys currently like Bill Burr or some of these guys who will really push it a little bit, and they'll push the hot buttons that people have. And gun control is certainly a gigantic one, especially down in the States. Do you gravitate more towards that, where you are just kind of needling a little bit? You're kind of, or is the observational just fine for you as well, or are you still just finding your voice?
Yeah, I like both. I feel like I just started enjoying like what I was doing like maybe 3 years ago. That's when I like figured out like how I want to do stand up, how I want to deliver stuff. And the gun control joke, I do like that joke. I haven't done it in a while. But yeah, I enjoy pushing. I like kind of making the audience uncomfortable a little bit, but it has to be, I have to know the joke is good. I just don't want to be edgy for the sake of being edgy. It has to be like, it has to fit a purpose for what I want to do. And I don't like set out to like offend people or anything.
No. Would you go after like cancel culture and some of these things? I don't know if cancel culture is a real thing or if it's just a figment of our imaginations or not. Certainly the stats, unfortunately, some people definitely take it seriously. Mm-hmm. Is that the type of stuff you would go after? Like, do you ever see injustice and say, okay, I want to kind of go after something, because it just doesn't make sense?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm working on a bit right now about, I was real worried that we were going to have like a second civil war. But it would be interesting to see like the statues they put up like 150 years from now, like some kid's walking with his dad and he says, "What's that over here, Dad?" And I go, "That's a statue of the Cash Me Outside girl." She was a hero in the Second Civil War. And then he goes, what are they doing to it? And I go, well, it turns out she said some misogynistic things on something called TikTok. So we had to tear it down. Are
you a Norm Macdonald fan?
Oh, yeah. He's my favorite comic. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. I heard a little bit of Norm in that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I appreciate when people do push the envelope, and nobody pushes the envelope quite the way that stand-ups do. And I'm grateful. I get my batteries charged talking to you because, again, and you'll see this when you're in your 40s and you look back at, because when you're in your 20s, you're the shit, and your generation is the one that's pushing these things and pushing the buttons, and we did it. Gen X, we pushed the buttons of the baby boomers. And there were certain changes that we wanted. And when I hear so many people in their 20s and 30s that are demanding the change that they are, and some of it makes sense to me, some of it doesn't make sense even a little bit. And when I hear somebody in their 20s making so much sense and able to kind of observe things the way that you observe things, it gives me hope for the future. It really, really does. So I appreciate your point of view, man.
Oh, I appreciate that. It means a lot.
Where do you, I hate to, you're a stand-up and stand-ups aren't really known necessarily for planning what they want to do. But again, I'm going to ask that question. Like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Are you a guy that wants a show? Or are you a guy that wants just lots of stand-up gigs with the template of a special every year or that kind of a thing? Where do you see yourself? What are your aspirations?
Well, my goal, starting out was to get on SNL. Now I don't really care about that anymore, but I would love to, I always envisioned myself hosting like a late night talk show.
Yeah.
So that was what I would want to do.
We share a similar love for that. Are you a Letterman fan?
Oh, big Letterman fan. Yeah.
Me too. Me too. I've got a real cool Letterman story I'll share with you here. I'll send it to you. It's I went and saw the show a month before he retired, and I had this whole plan as to how I'd get to talk to the guy, because it's impossible to talk to the guy, and
yeah.
It ended up coming to fruition, and I made David Letterman laugh. It's one of the greatest things in my entire life is I made David Letterman laugh, only for a second, because he laughed and then he immediately shot back a response that was way even funnier than what I said, which is exactly how I would have drawn it out anyway. But I don't know what it is about this discourse and the exchange of even what we're doing right now. Podcasts kind of feels that way. I just feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And that back and forth, I love it so much. And it's just very cool to see you doing. I keep saying this. It's cool to see young people doing this kind of a thing, who are some of your other big influences?
Norm, which you called me out on. I get that a lot. I feel like I've gotten better at not sounding like him all the time. But I love Gilbert Gottfried a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
There's an old school name too. A lot of people, they can't get past the voice, but that guy actually had a lot of very witty material.
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely. I love Colin Quinn.
Yeah.
Kevin Nealon. I like Chris Elliott. He's not really a stand-up, but a comedic actor.
Well, he's kind of got that. Do you know, have you looked into Andy Kaufman very much?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, Chris Elliott's kind of a younger generation of Andy Kaufman, sort of.
Definitely similar, yeah.
Yeah, that performance artist type stuff. Does that stuff appeal to you?
I enjoy watching it. It's not something I would ever I don't have that in me to like go all out and really commit to a bit like that. Just, yeah. But I enjoy watching it. It's fun, but I don't have the balls to do some of the stuff that they do.
Yeah, some of the stuff they do are just absolutely in the name of performance art, and the way that they're able to keep, like, you watched the new Borat movie?
I did, yeah.
The gal, I forget her name, and
she was great.
Oh my gosh. Like, and she's a like an improv actress, but the stuff that she did was just astounding to me. And I mean, that's stand up. I think I could probably wrap my head around. I could doing things like that and keeping in character and just committing the way that people like Chris Elliott or Kaufman or this young woman did.
Yeah.
Just astounding to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I wish I could do that stuff, but I just didn't see it.
I guess as we kind of move towards the close here, and again, it's just encouraging to hear somebody who is able to kind of speak their mind and do what they want to do. What advice would you have for people who are getting into stand up from the place? I know that you asked Bill and Steve the advice thing, but there are people who look at you and say, hey, no, what advice would you give? If you could go back to 17 or 19-year-old Trent and say, hey, do this, do this, do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, what would you say?
I would say record all your sets, listen back to them, keep what works. And if you think something's funny, but it's not getting a laugh, don't throw it away. Keep like trying different ways to do it. And the best advice I ever got was from a guy named Bowers, who used to own this comedy club called Morty's Comedy Joint in Indianapolis, who I was pretty good pretty fast. Like I got like my first hosting stuff like 6 months in.
Wow.
But he told me, there's going to be a time where you feel like you're not getting anything. It could last 6 months. It could last a year. It could last longer than that. But don't quit. If you feel like you're getting laughs, don't worry about like getting booked other places. That'll all come naturally. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep writing, keep doing stuff, keep getting up on stage. But a lot of comics are like in a rush to be like a shitty feature. Right. You know, or a shitty headliner. They want to skip the steps of figuring out like hosting, figuring out how to do a longer set. They want to skip that, which I get it because it's not very fun. Right. But yeah, just keep your head down and keep doing it. Keep working, keep writing.
The grinding, you got to grind it out.
Yeah.
Have you had that experience that did you say his name was Bowers or Bowers was the place?
Bowers was his name, Chris Bowers.
Okay. So the advice that Bowers gave you, have you found yourself in that place yet?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. There are times where I'll be doing well. I'll be having great sets, and then you're not really getting anything. Just no real reason. That's just kind of how it is. It's a weird thing in stand-up and other things, I think. Just in the entertainment industry in general. Mm-hmm. There's going to be stretches where you're not doing anything. But you just got to keep at it.
Well, and you gotta love technology for that. Like the fact that you can say to 4 or 5 of your comic friends, "Hey, shoot me a question. I'll answer it. I'll answer it to camera," and kind of go from there. And I mean, you can find ways to keep grinding.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so that's cool. Is the podcast a means to an end, or are you going to keep doing it for a long time?
I mean, I like doing it, especially like talking to people that I never thought I would ever talk to, like writers and other comics and stuff.
Yeah.
And you.
Oh, you're a sweetheart.
But yeah, I enjoy doing it. And I enjoy also like just being silly with my other comedian friends too. So I feel like I want to keep doing it. I don't see it as like a means to an end or anything.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. What are the best ways to find you? I want to our audience here. I mean, I know we're in a pandemic and whatnot, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of people with time on their hands. So what are the best ways to find you? You're on both Spotify and Apple?
Yeah, it should be on like pretty much everything you get your podcast. It's called There You Go with Trent Mabry. Yep. And you can follow me on Twitter at Trent Mabry. Yep. And on Instagram, Trent_Mabry. Those are the best ways to keep up with me.
That's fantastic. As we move to the close here, is there anything that you want to say to the He Changed It audience?
Thanks for listening to me. I hope you enjoy this podcast. Who else have you had on that's been? I know I was listening to the one you sent me with the other comic. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, we've had a plethora of people. That's the whole thing about the beautiful thing about He Changed It is that we can have basically anybody who's got a point of view and a story. It doesn't have to be somebody who's famous or a name or anything like that. I mean, we've had a bunch of names. We had some filmmakers on here, Adam Scorgi, who made, I don't know if hey, is Indiana a pot friendly place?
No,
they don't like the marijuana in the Indiana.
No, not yet.
I'm in a place called British Columbia, so we're kind of famous for it here. And so Adam Scorgi, who made this very famous pot movie called The Union. He's been on Rogan a couple of times. We've had him on. I wish I could talk about the project he's working on right now. We'll talk about it off camera.
Okay, cool.
But we've had some hockey players and some different athletes, things like that. University professors, obviously, because we're in a mental health space. We've had lots of men's coaches and therapists and different counselors and stuff. And those are all great conversations. They really are. They're awesome. However, none of them are kind of as open usually as stand-ups are. Mm-hmm. And I just, people who are involved in the world of comedy, there's just this kind of, I don't know if it's edge is the wrong word, but there's a I don't even know. Maybe you know the word that I'm looking for here, but it's an honesty that just
authentic.
Yes, that's exactly the word. Exactly the word. And people that I know that are stand-ups and are in that world, one of the reasons that they love it so much is that they can be as authentic as they want to be.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
So yeah. I appreciate you taking time out of your day here. I'm going to follow you for sure. My wife and I are planning on, I know He Changed It is going to be taking us to New York anyway. But I'm going to keep in contact with you if that's okay.
Oh yeah, please do.
Yeah. If I can be in the audience laughing away and cheering you on, I want to do that. And it's going to be fun to follow your career, man. And congratulations on everything that you've doing so far. Congratulations on the guests you've gotten on your podcast. That's fantastic.
Thank you, man.
I'm just really excited to watch you grow.
I really appreciate that. Thanks for having me, man. This was fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. See, they go by so quick.
Yeah.
I love doing this. It's the highlight of my week is anytime I get to shoot one of these episodes. Today is exactly on par with that. I enjoy these conversations so much. Again, thank you for everybody out there who has subscribed, who has shared. If you haven't done either of those things, I'm not going to say shame on you, but I am going to, I'm not below begging. Come on, subscribe, share. If you're a guy out there and want to check out the He Changed It app, it's available in both stores. It's still in its infancy. The features that are going to be added into this app, I mean, I see the roadmap of what Candace and her team are looking at, the features that are being added to this thing are astounding. There's some really cool stuff that's coming. If you want to be part of the He Changed It movement, download the app right now. And until the next podcast, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to welcome us into your ear holes. My name is Mike Chisholm. This is heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. Go change something.